What the f are all these big air tricks? What do we call them, and what are all the interesting little details we don't know about them? So I'm going to go through almost every big air trick from easiest to hardest, more or less. Let's rush through the basic stuff so we can get to that super cool, exciting, difficult stuff. Oh! No. So we've got a straight jump, nothing new here. Then we've got rotations, in which we've got back rolls and front rolls. Then we've got heli loops, otherwise known as landing loops or down loops. So a heli loop is any loop that happens above your head, and it's used to slow down your descent to the water and soften your landing. Whether the loop above your head is happening with the front hand or the back hand, it's still called a heli loop. Sent jumps or fast forwards. So these are a lot of fun. You steer the kite aggressively into the window with the front hand, and it helps you cover a large distance. It also sets you up really well for a backhand heli loop. I used to think that it was easier to learn front hand heli loops first, but in all my coaching I've realized that backhand heli loops starting out with the front hand send are actually way easier. Cool, now we get to inverted rotations. So the difference between normal rotations and inverted rotations are, in inverted rotations, your feet go over your head, so the board is above your head. So an inverted rotation happens about this axis, and a normal rotation, a flat rotation, happens about this axis, this way. No. Cool, now moving on to board offs, a little bit of old school coming into the big air. We've got board offs at the handle, at the fin, tic-tacs, rodeos, and more. No. Sweet, now we get to the point where we're combining tricks. So we have got inverted front rolls with board offs. So you go into an inverted rotation, leave the kite over your back shoulder, and it sets you up for a front hand heli loop. Then we've got inverted rotations with sent jumps. I really love doing these. Front roll board off spins. I don't actually think that's a good name. We gotta come up with something better. And I'm not sure if it counts as a big air trick because it's really difficult to do these at big heights. It's hard to go over like 5 or even 6 meters. And it's really hard to do them on smaller kites because you lose track of where the kite is. No. Alright guys, now for loops. So you've got different levels of loops. We start out with just baby loops, which is when you jump, you pull a loop, you get shot downwind, and you land and ride it out. And then you get kite loops. Now when we say kite loops, we're talking about a nice big jump with a powered loop. A kite loop is when you jump, you go pretty high, you pull your loop, you start to swing under the kite, and the kite catches you before you hit the water. That's the key difference between a baby loop and a kite loop. A kite loop has a backhand loop. Next up, we've got a contraloop. So it's called a contraloop because the kite goes in a contrary direction to what it normally would. And you do this by pulling on the front hand. So contraloops typically don't yank as much as kite loops. They can, but it depends on when and how you pull the loop. Bar spin. So a bar spin is the next low-hanging fruit after you've learned your first kite loops. It's really cool because when you go for a bar spin, you realize that there's this whole window of opportunity after the kite loop in which you can be trying new things, such as one-footers, a lake board off, a grab. And it's a really cool way to just take a small step up into, leveling up your kite loop game. Megaloops. A megaloop is basically a super advanced version of a kite loop. There's a lot of debate about what constitutes a megaloop. Some people say that the kite has to go horizontal or below horizontal. Other people say that it's about the height that you reach. Some people think it's a factor of both. For me, it's not really well defined. I mean, Yannick and I gave it a pretty good definition a while back.
On average, I would probably say 50 meters up, kite the same level as you, and you go 80, 100 meters forward. That would be a proper megaloop.
If you aren't ticking all three of those boxes, I wouldn't really call it a megaloop. It's only called a megaloop if it's f***ing extreme. Do you want to get good at big air kiting super fast? This is how I kited 4 years ago. After years of experimenting, I figured out the recipe for insane progression, which helped me get into King of the Air and break the Woo record twice. I want you to make insane progress too. So I've made a free guide with 15 of my most essential lessons to help you get super good, super fast. You can download it at gethighwithmike.com/fast. Alright guys, it's about to start getting complicated and reach a point where we don't really know what to call the tricks, but we've developed some pretty cool systems for making sure that the trick names make sense and aren't ambiguous. So you can break down any kite loop trick into 4 phases. First, what you do in the takeoff and on the way up. Second, what you do during the loop. Third, what you do on the way down from the loop. And fourth, how you land. And depending on when you perform the trick, it should have a different name. If you're enjoying this video, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. It helps so much. So over here, we've got a back roll kite loop. We call it a back roll kite loop because you do the back roll before the kite loop. And then naturally you get a front roll kite loop, which is when you do the front roll before you do the kite loop. Next, the late back roll. We call it a late back because you rotate after the takeoff, aka late. It's a staple food of a competitive big air kiter. It's the first big leap you take after learning proper powered kite loops. A late back doesn't require a special type of takeoff, so you can do the same takeoff that you would normally do to go super high and pull a kite loop. So what's super nice about this is you can achieve insanely massive heights, pull your kite loop, and then throw your rotation. So it makes it easier to do really massive kite loop late backs, unlike so many other tricks where if you want to do a rotation during the takeoff, it might affect your ability to bring power into the jump and affect your timing and prevent you from getting height. So late backs are sick because you can do them massive. As high as you can do a kite loop is how high you can do a late back. And that is why we see so many kite loop late backs in Red Bull Megaloop. Alright, the boogie loop, invented by Mr. Ruben Lenton, like so many of these tricks before. What a legend! So a boogie loop is an inverted front roll kite loop. So your feet and your board have got to come up and over your head. It's a little bit harder to do a massive boogie loop than it is to do a late back, because a boogie loop has a bit more of a complicated takeoff. The inverted back roll kite loop. The riders who do this really well are Vatia Boersma and Xavier Kane. Added rotations. So I call this a kite loop late back with added rotation. I used to call them kite loop double late backs, but I realized that isn't a good name. Can you guess why? It's because there's ambiguity in that. A late back, by convention, is a back roll that is executed during the loop. This is a double late back. So we need to call this trick something else. In the Big Air Kite League, we started calling these rotations on the way down from the loop added rotations. So if someone says, I did a triple late back, what should that look like? You're right if you think it should look like this. So if I name a trick for someone, such as a back roll kite loop late back roll with one added rotation. Can you imagine what that looks like? If you can and it's not ambiguous, then you know it's a name that makes sense. It's so important that the names we give these tricks aren't ambiguous. Kite loop late front roll. Not many guys do this. Mostly freestylers do them, I guess because they're used to doing S-bends. Here's a clip of my friend Eric eating shit. Back roll kite loop late back. Check out this video of my friend Timothy doing his first back roll kite loop late backs. I coached him through the process. It was so sick to watch him land them. So here's a boogie with added rotation. We used to call this a boogie late front, but that doesn't make sense because late fronts, just like late backs, are performed during the loop and the second rotation is on the way down from the loop. Next up, we've got the kite loop late board off. We call it a late board off because the board is pulled off after the loop on the way down. We need to distinguish between a kite loop board off when the board is pulled off during the peak pull, the pivotal moment of the trick, and a late board off when the board is pulled off on the way down. Next, of course, we have the kite loop or contra loop board off. So if you do it with the backhand, it's a kite loop board off. You do it with the front hand, it's a contra loop board off. Next are kite loop board offs at the fin. It's easy to get the board off, but having limited leverage over the board makes it difficult to get it on in the last few seconds remaining. I'm gonna stop here before we get into more complex moves, and I'm putting those in part 2. You might be wondering how these tricks score. Well, we at the Big Air Kite League have developed a judging tool, and you can check out the tool at bakl.heatscoring.com/test scores. You need training to use the tool properly, but I still think it's cool to show you how we make judging more calculated and objective and try to remove these biases that we all have. It also makes it easier for competitors to know what scores well so they can best adapt their riding to the judging criteria. The tool is just a guide. The judges are professionals and they're experts at seeing the nuances in the rider's performance and making an excellent judgment. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like and make sure to go down and hit that little red button somewhere over here. Guys, it really helps so much. If you've got any questions or comments, I'm sure there's gonna be a shitload of them for this video. Please be sure to drop them in the comments below and I will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. Muchos besos. Adios.
Meow.